They say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, so maybe don't roll for William Tell and Asclepius back to back. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here, bringing you a spotlight for the servant who's scientifically proven to make you start humming Snake Eater on sight, William Tell. We'll be examining his stats and skills, as well as going over pointers to how you utilize him effectively, and an overall grade, comparing him to how he stacks up to the other 3-star servants. So if you're excited to finally have an archer who uses a bow, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell, so you can catch all of these spotlight videos as they go up, and you can help out the channel. Now, on to Will's stats. William Tell has a max HP of 9,310 and a max attack of 7,384, which becomes 7,014 due to his archer class modifier. Both his HP and attack are about average for an archer of his rarity, although compared to the 3-star servants overall, his HP is a little below average while his attack is fairly high. When it comes to his command cards, he has 3 hits on his quick card, 3 hits on his arts, 3 hits on his buster, and 5 hits on his extra card. He has an NP gain rate of 0.66% and a star rate of 8%. Will's stats are good all around, but he has a slight advantage in offense, which makes him a balanced attacker. His NP gain is very good due to his high hit counts and double arts card deck. His star generating is lacking, however, due to only having 1 quick card. Taking a look at his skills, Will's first skill is Hunter of Udi rank B. This skill has a chance to seal an enemy's skills for 1 turn between 50 and 100%, and it also grants him between 10 to 30 crit stars, both depending on level. His second skill is Unwavering Patience rank C. This skill increases his own arch card effectiveness for 3 turns between 20 and 30% depending on level, and also grants him debuff immunity for 3 turns. And finally, Will's last skill is Aiming rank EX. This skill increases his crit star absorption rate for 1 turn between 600 and 1000%, and it also increases his crit damage for 1 turn between 50 and 100%, both depending on level. For his passives, Will has Magic Resistance rank D, which increases debuff resist by 12.5%, and Independent Action rank A, which increases his crit damage by 10%. Moving on to his deck and Noble Phantasm, William Tell has an Arts Buster deck with Quick Arts Buster Buster and an Arts Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm has a letter that's not part of the English alphabet in it, so I'm gonna pronounce it Apfelscheiben. It's a single target arts attack that ignores evasion for 1 turn and deals damage to a single enemy with between a 900 and 1500% damage modifier depending on level. It also deals extra damage against enemies who do have evasion with between a 200% and 250% damage modifier depending on overcharge. William Tell doesn't need a million bullets, bones, or stakes, so his Ascension mat requirements are pretty straightforward. For level Ascension, he needs 6 Yggdrasil Seeds, 20 Chains, 6 Lenugos, and 4 Spirit Roots. Yggdrasil Seeds can be farmed at Fallen Babylon in Babylonia with a 49% drop rate, Chains have a 65% drop rate at the Wastelands of Death in Camelot, Lenugos have an 18% drop rate at the Blood Fort in Babylonia, and Spirit Roots are best farmed at the Holy City in Camelot, where they have a 12% drop rate. For skill leveling, Will is going to require 30 Chains, 12 Yggdrasil Seeds, 11 Bloodstone Tears, and 16 Arrowheads per skill. Bloodstone Tears have an 18% drop rate at Shinjuku 2 Chome in Shinjuku, and Arrowheads are a new Ascension mat in Lost Belt 4 that can be farmed at the God Sky Boulder Ruins with a 40% drop rate. Unlike Asclepius, William Tell is a much more straightforward and easy to utilize servant. He is a purely offensively focused single target arts archer, much like Robin Hood and Euryale. As is the case with most archers, his stats are quite good and well balanced. He has a great attack stat for his rarity with more or less average health, as well as an amazing NP gain. Just about the only area that Will struggles in stat-wise is star generating, but even that isn't as much of an issue as we'll soon see with his skills. Because one aspect that significantly separates William Tell from the other arts archers is his specialization in crit damage, a specialization that is wholly supported by his kit. Right off the bat, Will has a high-ranking independent action, which gives him strong passive crit damage. His third skill, Aiming, builds on this by further buffing his crit damage by a whopping 100%, as well as boosting his star weight by 1000%. As an archer, Will already has above average star weight, so he has no issues with gathering stars, but this buff just makes it even easier by removing that extra bit of RNG and making him more consistent. The real star of this skill though is the crit damage buff. 100% is massive. And because he already has independent action, Will is one of the few crit servants who can reach over 100% crit damage all on his own. This skill is all about setting up a single turn of burst damage, and to that extent it does a phenomenal job. But to make Will even more consistent, he also has his first skill, Hunter of Udi, which skill seals an enemy and grants him 30 crit stars. Naturally, the Star Bomb effect is the most important aspect of the skill. An automatic 30 crit stars combined with a 1000% buff to star weight all but guarantees that he's going to crit multiple times in the turn that he activates this skill. This makes Will a very self-sufficient and easy crit servant to set up for huge damage, even if you don't have a top tier crit support. The skill seal portion of this skill is nice to have as well, but it's very niche and you will almost always just use this skill as a star bomb. Finally, Will has Unwavering Patience, a skill that grants him a 30% arts buff and debuff immunity for 3 turns. This skill is very simplistic, but its effects are fundamental to using Will effectively. The multi-turn buff to arts gives him a huge buff to his already good NP gain, as well as his NP damage. With this skill active, Will can almost completely fill up his NP gauge with an arts crit, which makes him a very consistent NP spammer. A full 3 turns of debuff immunity is also significant for many late game boss fights, since it makes Will completely immune to enemies that can counter him with stuns and attack or crit damage down debuffs. For that reason, I do recommend leveling Unwavering Patience first, since it gives Will so many benefits, followed by aiming for bigger burst damage and then the Star Bomb last. Will's NP is a single target arts attack that not only ignores evasion, but deals additional damage against enemies who have evade. Damage wise, this NP is on the weaker end of the spectrum, unfortunately. However, the utility of being able to hit through evade is good, and it can be really explosive against specific servants who love to spam evade. William Tell's bread and butter lies in his high burst damage. Thanks to his Star Bomb, his Star Absorb, and his ridiculous crit damage steroid, he is very easily able to set himself up for crit Brave Chains, where he deals upwards of 100,000 damage with little to no support. He also crits frequently without the need for any skills because of his naturally high star weight. All of this gives him a very high damage ceiling for a 3-star. But he doesn't just need to rely on crits either. His face card damage is respectably good too, thanks to his multi-turn arts buff and his double buster cards. And while his NP damage is weak, it can easily be spammed out due to his high NP gain. So while Will's damage can fluctuate significantly depending on his skill cooldowns, it never really falls too low, which makes him a very safe and easy to use archer. He also has strong challenge quest viability due to his debuff immunity and evasion pierce, so he does scale well into the late game. It isn't all apples and roses with William Tell though. His skills have low uptime, so you do need to time them well to compensate for the long cooldowns. He also has no hard defensive skills whatsoever, which means that he is very fragile and needs to be consistently babysat if you plan on using him for harder, longer battles. And as I mentioned, his NP damage is very low in most cases, and while he can spam it to make up for the low damage, he does share a class with Euryale and Robin Hood, which makes that low damage all the more noticeable. As for team comp, William Tell is a flexible art servant that can fit into a wide variety of teams. For a more crit-based team that focuses on high burst damage, I would recommend pairing him with servants who can bolster his crit damage or provide star generating like Lan Ling, Chiron, and Caesar. Lan Ling and Chiron provide 2 of the best party-wide crit buffs around, and they also possess arts buffs to really help bolster Will's NP gain and damage. And thanks to Will's Star Absorb, Chiron's high star weight isn't as much of an issue. Caesar is an excellent free-to-play option due to his almost equally strong crit damage buff, as well as the Star Bomb effect on his NP. Just be wary of his defense down debuff, since William Tell is already pretty fragile. For harder fights, it may be better to focus on using supports who can help keep William Tell alive and provide him with consistent art buffs rather than just crit buffs. To that extent, Asclepius, Tamamo, and Mosh are excellent choices. Asclepius is all about the healing game, and he can keep Will alive perpetually thanks to his strong healing and guts. He can also provide NP charge to help Will with spamming his NP. Tamamo and Mosh make for strong choices as well thanks to their heavy defensive focus and strong damage buffs. In Tamamo's case, she can even lower Will's cooldowns to make his damage much more consistent. William Tell's Bond CE is the Eulogized Shot. It buffs the party's arch card effectiveness by 10% and the crit damage by 15%. This CE is not really worth using due to the low stats. Instead, go for craft essences that boost crit damage, like Another Ending, Sailor in White, Gem Magecraft, or Talk on the Hot Sand. For harder fights where crit damage isn't the main focus, it can help to use CEs that provide arch buffs like Collide Sapphire, Royal Icing, Formal Craft, and Sign of a Smiling Face. They can all really help keep up Will's NP gain and his NP damage. In the future, Springtime Kodo Strings can be useful for niche situations. For example, if you're using Will against an enemy with Evade, it grants an arch buff as well as additional overcharge by 2 stages. For command codes, it's best to stick with the crit theme, so I do recommend Gakyo no Ofude since it buffs arch crit damage. Overall, William Tell is a highly specialized archer that hits well above his weight class. He excels in dealing with enemies who abuse Evade due to his evasion pierce and his bonus damage. His strong crit buffs give him some of the highest burst damage potential in his rarity, and he is a self-sufficient crit servant, which makes him versatile and not as reliant on supports as other crit DPSs. On the downside, he does suffer from low uptime on his skills, he lacks any form of hard defense, which makes him fragile, and his low NP damage prevents him from excelling as much as the other major arch servants in his class. That said though, William Tell gets an A- from me. Despite his weaknesses, he does excel in what he does, and his crit damage is hard to ignore. He also makes for an excellent archer for newer players to invest in since he isn't super reliant on top tier supports and he scales well into the late game. Given how powerful William Tell is in boss fights, I don't think he'll have to worry about being power crept by a lower rarity and easier to obtain archer anytime soon, at least for like a month. And those are my thoughts on William Tell. Jokes aside, I do think he is a very good servant with some very high upsides, but some considerable downsides as well. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.